Well, hello and welcome to Chatterkick's Generation Social Media podcast. We have two very special guests today, Mariah Black Overholt, who is an ad strategist and analytics lead for Chatterkick, and Luis Trejo, who is the COO at Chatterkick. So welcome both of you, and thanks for joining us today.
Always happy to be on.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
So I am really excited about today's discussion because it is kind of almost a secret sauce for Chatterkick and something that we've been doing since we started as a company and how we approach organic social differently from other agencies and what it means for our clients whenever we do that and some of the aha moments that they have. And so really the premise around this is that so many brands publish content and try to game the algorithm and figure out exactly, well, how many posts am I supposed to do? When am I supposed to post them? Do I need 6 people to go in and immediately react on these posts to get bigger reach? And we've basically figured out how to get past all of those concerns and almost guarantee some results. So before I give any, all of that information away, I want to kick it over to you, Luis, because what is the origin story of what this strategy is? What is the strategy? What's the origin story behind it? And when did we start doing this tactic?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and one that kind of came out of being born by the founder of the company, Beth. Was really kind of the premise behind it. So back in 2012 is when we started, and coincidentally, that was also the same year that Facebook opened up a promoted or a boost of a post. And so really the approach was, when we were talking to our clients, reach is something that's very hard to stand behind, an organic reach. And it's really, the platform itself is kind of deciding where that goes for free on their schedule. But then being able to layer on a paid component was like a lever that we could stack on by ourselves. So this was more of how do we best mitigate that risk and how can we control it? Mm-hmm. And then just thinking about putting ourselves in our client's shoes, if we're paying money to have this content developed, to post, to capture videos or photos, then we really want to make sure that the right people are seeing it at the right time. So it was just too much to leave solely on the platform to just say, here you go, control is all yours. It really gave us a way to control the controllable from our end.
I was going to ask, kind of building off of that, what's the actual problem there that we were solving for, do you think?
I think some of it was trying to figure out, there was a lot of agencies at that time that were pushing volume. It's just post more, mm-hmm. get more posts out there, get more words out there, get more content out there. And then you're just hoping that the algorithm's going to reward you for that. So it was a little bit of trying to figure out what's the best mix of that, and also being able to layer on the paid side of things. So it was, we really did a lot of testing and trying to figure out what was the best mix. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's like I said before, what you can control is better than always just going for, let the platform decide where the best route for this is.
One of the things that I think is so fascinating about this approach of the paid amplification of content, and Mariah, I'll talk to you in a little bit about what that actually looks like and how it's a little different from boosting a post. But it's the fact that it translates across every single platform that we have, and it's held up for almost 15 years now. And so I'm curious, Luis, from a business standpoint, why do you think it's held up for that long and across all of the platforms?
Yeah, I think more that it's a principle that we use instead of a platform specific tactic. And so being able to lean back on, what I was talking about before, where it's if we are in the client's shoes, we're spending all of this money in order to be able to project our name or our brand or our products or our website or whatever it is. It's banking on the principle to say, like, this is platform agnostic. Like, we can put this particular dollars behind these posts in a way, no matter what platform it's on. So that gives us a really good foundation to build off of, and a really great way for us to understand what that means as a company. Like, every single person can understand that principle. It doesn't have to be, specific to one particular platform, while there's some nuances. But that really lets us, keep that foundation for the business.
So now that we've kind of set the stage on the why we started doing this exactly, Mariah, I want to dive into you a little bit on the how, without going into ads manager, because nobody wants to do that, right? But can you walk us through what paid social actually means at Chatterkick, and how it is so different from what most people actually picture or think of whenever they hear, well, we're going to promote a post, we're going to boost a post, right? Like, that's what people generally think whenever we first talk about this with them.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a couple different assumptions that people have. One, when we say we're going to promote or, create an ad out of something, they assume that it's going to be thousands, massive campaign, and outside of maybe the traditional content that's going out on a feed. It's going to be something that's only seen in this instance or only for this amount of time. That's misconception number one. And misconception number two is kind of like what you were saying, in that there are different levels of ads management on the three major platforms that you're probably, or four major platforms really, that you're using for content creation. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok all have what I would consider to be like the easy version of promoting or boosting a post, wherein you basically press a button and say, spend $50 over 2 days to boost this. And that's kind of what you've been saying, which is basically just to increase the reach, which sounds great in theory. That's we want to see more reach, right? But really the tactic behind a lot of this and some of the strategy and philosophy that we're talking about is being able to reach the correct audience. So it's like adding on to that a little bit. So we want to reach the correct audience, but we also want them to take maybe a certain action, which is not necessarily available with a simple boost. But what a lot of people don't realize or what don't understand is that the advanced tools are available to everyone. You don't have to have a special degree. You don't have to have a certification. You don't have to be on Facebook's VIP list, which turns out no one is. But everyone has access to the ads manager side of things, which allows you to have kind of this back end look at tools. And what that gives us is control. So we're allowed to say, like, okay, I want to build this audience around this. So these are my ICPs. Let me find the interests that fit this ICP. Maybe I have a custom list that I want to use to target. There's all kinds of geographic tools, those kind of things, to build this list itself, to make sure that we know that the person who is seeing it is the correct person. The next thing that we can do with these kind of advanced capabilities outside of boosting is determine the outcome of what it is the interaction is. So when we boost something, again, we just said we want people to see more of it, versus if we use the advanced tools, we can say, I want people to take this sort of interaction on it. I want them to, watch the entire video, or I want them to interact with the post, or even I want them to go to the website or fill out some sort of further action. So it gives us a lot more control and allows us to be able to benchmark and baseline a lot of the outcome as well.
I think that you bring up a really interesting point, and a question for me that comes up from this is it's not taking all of your content exactly and throwing it into the ad campaign with the same ad objective, right? Like, you are kind of picking and choosing based on the content piece, because our content strategy for our clients isn't all. A lot of our clients come in and they're like, oh, I want to drive leads. I want to, get whatever it is that their goal is. That's usually like way down the funnel. But what we always educate on is, well, you need it across the entire funnel. So you need to have some of those loyalty pieces, and maybe that's paired with engagement, or maybe that's another one is paired with video views, just like you said. And so what do you think is the real distinction between giving every post its own budget and timeline versus the common approach of social, and what lives on the feed lives on the feed, and then we've got these paid evergreen ads is what I'll call them, but where everything lives under the exact same umbrella with the exact same objective with the exact same pool of budget to pull from.
I think Luis kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but it's very much just the philosophy that we have behind this. With those evergreen ads, which we run evergreen campaigns as well. A lot of times clients will have, specific goals in mind for those, and those live outside of, the feed content. But the feed content is really what we're talking about today. And those are going to be the pieces that people see when they go to your profile. Like here's the chronological list of, today we're posting a behind the scenes, or tomorrow it might be a promo, or maybe, the next day is, a feature of the product. And that's the content that we're talking about today. So it doesn't necessarily live in a campaign that is like evergreen. It is really just an ongoing visibility of kind of your social content and your social feed. When we set up our content and when we think about how we're going to promote it, we think about the fact that every post needs to have its own job. It needs to have a purpose. It has to, Liv, you kind of alluded to this. Is it going to drive loyalty? Is it going to drive consideration? Is this a conversion focused post? And when we build out and brainstorm for those posts, that's one of the things we're thinking about, like, what is the end goal for this? And once we have that kind of built, that allows us to kind of build the copy and the strategy around the post itself, so that it's not just a random, like, behind the scenes, but it has to do something. Once that's all set in place and everything's approved, at that point, we then determine, okay, what is the end goal for this? So it's a video, and it's a, consideration post. We want people to learn something for that. Okay, I'm probably going to think about that in an objective of, I want people to watch the entire video because they're going to learn the most by watching the entire thing. And so that's kind of the strategy around how we build that out, is to really think about it from start to finish. What do I want this post to do? And how is the best way to get it there? Do I need to change the objective? Do I need to change the audience? Perhaps it maybe isn't your broadest audience. Maybe it's a smaller segment that is more focused on kind of the conversion aspect of it. But that can change for everything. And it just depends on what the post needs to do.
And from a business perspective, Luis, I'm going to kick this question over to you. We're talking about incremental ad spend dollars on these. What does that actually mean to us? Like, as far as, how much we're spending per post, or budget wise, what percentage of a client's budget goes into these, typically these types of campaigns?
Yeah, I think some of the beauty of this is that, like, you don't necessarily have to have a very big budget in order to make this work. And because we can kind of do that audience targeting in a way where we're getting it in front of the people that the client needs them to get in front of, that just with a little bit of a budget behind a 1 post or 5 posts or however many posts it is, really makes the amplification of what you're trying to get out there stand out. And so, like, for $20, $50, $100, $150, I mean, like, that goes a long way. And because we're looking and framing at these particular posts on, okay, like Mariah was saying, we need the outcome of this one to be a conversion, or we need the outcome of this one to be a website click, that we're able to focus those dollars in on that, as opposed to just saying, boost this post and just spread it out somewhere and go find these people. It just makes the search that much more easy to target.
Yeah, it's a lot more efficient too. And because we have a lot of baselines and benchmarks on, like, CPMs, or even on conversion type actions, we know on average, it's probably going to cost, $8 to $10 to reach 1,000 people on Facebook. So that allows us to kind of work backwards. Okay, like, here's what our audience size is. Here's how much it will cost to reach these folks. Or, I want to try to get 20 clicks off of this specific post. How much is it going to cost me when I look at like the cost per click? So there's a couple ways that you can even like work backwards instead of trying to guesstimate. And there's a lot of tools out there these days that allow you to kind of do that kind of benchmarking per platform as well.
Which I think leads us perfectly in. You guys told me a couple of hot takes before we jumped in here. And hot take number one, Mariah, was, I can guarantee how your content performs. That is a very bold statement in marketing, where a lot of what we say to people is, well, it depends, right? But Mariah, what I'm hearing you say is that you can guarantee a range for impressions and cost per click and CPM and cost per conversion and things of that nature on these types of campaigns kind of specifically. So what makes you that confident enough to say that, where most marketers are like, I hope this one works, and sends it out into the nether, hoping that piece will perform?
Well, that is very much, I think, the secret sauce. And like we said it best, of like, we need to be able to, kind of put our money where our mouth is. If we're going to do this work on this content, we need it to be able to reach the right people. And so, having that control over the things that are normally uncontrollable, leaving it up to a roll of the dice or the platform. And one of the things I think people need to remember is that the platform is not here to achieve your business goals. The platform is there to achieve its goals, and its goals are to show content in front of the people that are going to see it. And it doesn't matter if it's your content or not. If it's more, if people are more likely to watch a funny kitten video versus, your B2B software ad, it's going to show a funny kitten video if it's available in its inventory. That's just the fact of the matter is, we all love these platforms, but we cannot think of them as like, thinking about us all the time. Like, they do not exist to really actually amplify your content in the way that you want. So if you want that to happen, you have to be able to control some of that. And so when I say like, I can kind of guarantee a little bit of, what those results are going to look like, that means that, like we said, we've kind of done the background work, we've done the benchmarking, we look at industries, we look at trends, we look at objectives, kind of all, even formats. Like, I know that, video is going to be cheaper to show to a wider range of people, and I'm going to get, more video engagement on a post versus if I'm asking for people to share something, because that's a higher value engagement. But I can say, I know what that's going to cost you to get video versus what it's going to cost you to get shares. And so, like you said, we can kind of work our way back into that by saying, okay, you gave me a $50 budget on this per post. We can probably guarantee that with the, barring any sort of crazy anomalies in seasonality, which a lot of people will talk about, like Black Friday or like Q4, it's going to be way more expensive. There are some instances where seasonality can affect ad inventory pretty significantly on Facebook, especially. Google Ads sometimes as well. But I would say that for most of the year, most of the benchmarks do hold up, and they're pretty standard. You're not going to see wild fluctuations kind of month to month or week to week. And so we are basically able to say, okay, given this budget, given this objective, and given this type of post, we can pretty much guarantee that you're going to be in this range, which is not something you can say with organic.
Yeah. And I think like even going back to like the predictability of a range, like, so often we'll have conversations around like, well, how did this company get a viral post? Like, how did they do that? And, what we try to tell them is like, a viral post is essentially a lottery ticket that you hit. Your odds aren't very good. From a predictability standpoint, like it's hard to repeat. It's hard to budget for. You can't put a viral post on a media plan for next quarter. Like, you can't guarantee that. Predictable ranges is a different thing. So if we can say, okay, for these 5 posts that we are going to be sending out in September, here's what we're expecting, and here's the range that we're expecting. And that's a lot more predictable to like a chief marketing officer or someone in the leadership team, as opposed to saying, we're going to try all these different weird and crazy things that we've been seeing that have been going viral on the internet. And we're going to try to repeat that for our brand so that hopefully we can cash in that lottery ticket.
And it's not to say that it's not exciting if you do have a viral moment. I mean, we've had a few of those here over the years, sometimes on posts that we never would have expected to go viral. But I think something else that's very important to remember about virality is that for the vast majority of people, when you have a viral post, it probably isn't actually going to drive the action that you think it is going to. People expect that, a viral post is going to, quadruple their followers overnight, or, bring in all of these new sales, or catapult you to this, astronomical, visibility level. And that's honestly just not true. Generally, when a viral post does happen, it's just that it is viral for 3 to 5, maybe a week, and then performance drops right off. Your next post isn't going to get any higher reach. You're probably not seeing the interactions that you would expect, after that. And, there's a good chance that a majority of the people that did see that post aren't even in your target, and are probably not going to come back to see your content in the future. So it is exciting to see a viral post, like for sure, but do not expect it or hope for it to be the thing that drives your business.
I think another interesting hot take that you all had is that whenever we have paid amplification behind posts, we don't worry about the timing of the post, and even to some degree the number of the posts, right? I've seen over the years scopes that come in with 20, 30 pieces of content. We start adding paid money behind that, and we can decrease the scope down to 10 a month instead. And there are some ramifications to that from a budget perspective. But Mariah, from where you sit, we do have some clients that sometimes post alongside of us, right? And a lot of times they'll ask us, well, what time should I post? Like, how many times a day should I post? What's the ideal number? And if you Google this, Sprout has numbers, Hootsuite has numbers, all of the major platforms, publishing platforms will try to tell you at 7:09 p.m. on Tuesday night, this is whenever you should publish, right? Why does this matter so much less once paid amplification is added into the mix?
Well, there's a couple things that go along with that. So the number one thing that means it doesn't matter when you add paid amplification to that is because when you add paid amplification, you're also adding a schedule to it. So we're saying, like, I want to run this post for, 3 or 4 days, or, up to a week, depends on whatever your budget is. And so at that point, it doesn't matter when you posted it, because it's still going to be seen until the end of that scheduled ad has run its course. So, one point in time isn't going to be like, oh, I have to hit it at exactly this point, or it's not going to reach, my 10,000 people that I paid for. That's simply not the case, because you'll have set it to run for 3 or 4 days, as opposed to, just hoping that, your 10,000 people see it in the hour that Facebook gives it any sort of recognition in the organic feed. But to your second question, I think, why does it matter so much, or why it may not matter? It can still matter on the organic side of things, but not in kind of the precise kind of dialed in way that I think a lot of the, when to post kind of forums will give you. And I think it's just some common sense. So, thinking about how people use the platform, on LinkedIn, when are you most likely to be on LinkedIn? Is it during the day? Is it on the weekend? Is it at night? Think about when your ideal audience is going to be likely to be interacting. LinkedIn is generally like a Monday through Friday. Sometimes we'll see some evening kind of activity, but generally it's during the workday, because it's a platform that people can be on at work and maybe get a little bit of networking value out of, but also like it's kind of fun to scroll sometimes. So that it's just human behavior, and that's how people interact, versus like a Facebook or, especially like an Instagram, like, or a TikTok, where TikTok and Instagram are likely to be later at night. Maybe you're there on the weekends. You're just kind of, if you're watching reels, post them in the evenings, because that's when people are likely to be watching those. So there's no hard and fast rule, but think about how your people are likely to be using the platform, and kind of build your posting schedules around that, especially from if you're not going to be doing any sort of paid amplification. Just think about how people use it.
And then kind of, I alluded to this before, Luis, but like I said, I've had several clients over the years that we've actually decreased our management and maybe encouraged them to, hey, like, what if we just put some money behind here? And so if you were advising a CMO that was coming in on where to spend their next marketing dollar, if it's more content or more amplification, what would you tell them and why?
Yeah. So short answer, amplification almost every time. Longer answer is it depends. But I would lean on the side of amplification for sure. You know, depending on the sector or segment that a client is in. So like, for example, like if somebody is in like a beauty segment that's like going direct to consumer, you know, it could with more content could have a better effect. But, you know, for other businesses where maybe it's more of a B2B setting and you're really trying to like get into that niche audience that you're trying to target to, you know, amplification is going to be your best bet there. I think there have been times where we'll talk to CMOs or leaders of businesses, and they're looking at the invoice that we send them, and they're looking at the number of posts that they're getting, and they're kind of crunching the numbers and doing the math. And the way that we try to direct them is let's not start there. Let's start at the end of how you want the story to end. Okay. Mm-hmm. So for one particular piece of content or 5, how do you want the story to end? And if we could start there, we can work backwards into understanding, okay, this particular video, we're trying to drive engagement. And so we can start to work backwards in the story and really figure out, okay, where do we need to start with creating this? And then once we get to that point, we can say, okay, now we have found the particular piece of content that we want. We've honed in the messaging, so we know that like this is how we're supposed to be talking to your particular audience. And then when we've figured out those 2 pieces, then we turn up the volume. Okay, so we want to amplify and then solely direct a lot of the dollars behind the post to the right individuals. So, you know, talking about business leaders, you know, CMOs, leaders of marketing teams, it's really, you know, flipping that change of mind and really saying like, how do you want that story to end? And then working with teams like us to figure out how to make that work.
Mm-hmm. And I think that your messaging comment touches on something very important, and it is, I think, a really easy trap to fall into, that you're not seeing the results on your organic strategy. And so then you're like, well, we just need more. Like we need to say it more at people. And sometimes it's, you need to say it better and you need to say it louder. And that's where I like the paid as almost a little test to see, okay, if I actually hit the target audience that I want to hit, does this messaging resonate with them? So I think that's a great call out.
Yeah.
I think,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say one other thing to kind of lead off of that. When we talk about, you know, organic versus paid, the one other thing that I think is important to remember is that we are not, you know, we talked about this a little bit at the beginning, but these are not dark ads. These live on your feed. These are posts that are actually on your feed that we're promoting. They're not separate from that. And so that's a very important distinction to make. We get a lot of people that ask like, well, should we just run ads? Do we need to still worry about content on the feed? And I think that you really do need to. One of the signals that the platforms have that you are an active, engaged business is that you're posting regularly and not just running those ads. So when you are thinking about like a paid versus organic strategy, you have to think about it in terms of like, okay, like this is the feed content that's going out, and then I'm going to promote that. Maybe I'll do evergreen stuff in addition to that, but don't let the feed be blank and empty, because one, the platform is going to see that or not see that and you know, see that you're not interacting or not posting. But then your audience is going to see the same. Maybe they see your ad and then they go back to your profile and you don't have any actual content. They'd be like, well, that's kind of shifty, kind of disingenuous. And maybe I don't trust that as much. And we know at the end of the day that trust is kind of the key for both the platform and for the user.
And I think that takes us into our last hot take that we have, which for a social agency, we don't run organic social, asterisk, right there on that. Luis, can you talk about that and what that actually means for us and unpack it a little bit for everybody?
Yeah, that is a pretty hot take. So we don't run organic social, at least not the way most people think you should. I think that's the hotter take, or that's the more clear take. You know, if your goal is to like create a bunch of content and throw it out there and see what happens, you know, then that's probably not a way that, you know, we would want to work with you. So like, it's not that we don't ever post organic content, because that's not true. It's just the way that we approach and frame up how we decide to pick and choose what that means. And so I think like we're not using organic social as like a growth channel in a way that we are that we were talking about before with the amplification and being able to put dollars behind certain posts. So we try to flip the script on this. We try to do a lot of educating for our clients on like really understanding, yes, we still do organic social, but we do it a little bit differently. And we do that so that we can position, and ultimately at the end of the day, that we can get better results and ROI for our clients. Mm-hmm. So really how we think about organic is like a trust infrastructure. So we want that to be the true voice of the brand. We want that to be the people that are working in your company. We want that to be the customers that the clients have. We want that like social proof of like there's real humans behind this brand. And so that's how we think about, you know, what organic means. Now, while we tend to lean on the side of amplification with paid dollars, we still need the other side of the equation of the truly organic social posts.
It really blurs the lines between what I think most people think of whenever they think of organic social and whenever they think of paid social. And it is always a really fun exercise for us to come in with another agency that especially has a paid, they're working with maybe another agency that's working on the paid side, and for us to explain our philosophy behind it and see how they I've never had somebody tell me before, that seems silly, right? Like people are always like, that makes sense, that tracks, and I agree with that. And it's always just a slight shift in a mindset and how to reframe and how people think about organic and paid and how they can work together. And I think that, Mariah, one question that I'm going to throw out to you is, what can we learn and how can we actually apply it to the traditional paid social side whenever we do have some of this paid amplification? Because there have been some really good learnings before and some really great crossover between the traditional and what we're doing as well.
Yes. You kind of hit on it a little bit earlier, but one of my absolute favorite things to do with paid amplification of posts is to then use that as a testing ground. Essentially, you have identified a test every single time that you put a post out that's amplified. You know who it's going to go to, you know when they're going to see it, you know what the objective is for them to see. And then I can say at the end, like, did this work? Especially when I compare it to the other posts that are similar to it. Because again, if you have, you know, bucketed your content and given everything a purpose, then you should be able to say like, okay, this post was supposed to do this. This post was also supposed to do this. Which one worked better? And, you know, how did I measure it against that? And then once you've identified the top performers, at that point, you can then say, okay, I have a traffic campaign that's running independently of this. this post did amazingly well. Let me look at the messaging behind it. Maybe there's something I can take back and put into that evergreen campaign into more ads. Or my personal favorite, such a life hack, so lazy, is take that exact post and throw it into your traffic campaign. Because one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that you can do that. You can take, you can take feed content and use it in evergreen campaigns. And the beauty of it, and it doesn't even have to be the same objective. Like maybe you were aiming for engagement on the feed post originally, but if I, use that post ID in a traffic campaign, then I maybe want to have people go to the site for it. But the cool part is, if I use that same post, it still has all the engagement on it that I had built before. So now you're just layering up this level of interaction. You're not starting from scratch. You're not, trying to build this community on a post that maybe already has 1,000 comments. And it is such an easy way to repurpose the work that you've already done and make it work harder for you down the line. So I talk about that all the time. I'm like, wait, what? You can do that? And it's mind blowing and such a fun hack.
All right. Any last thoughts as we close out here? This has been such a fun discussion about kind of our strategy. Anything else that you wanted to throw out for people to know?
Yeah, we kind of touched on it a little bit, but just always remembering that organic and paid do not live in separate silos. Remembering that the platform, requires both really and uses both of those as signals to determine, where and how your content performs and kind of the quality signals it gives you. So just not treating them as completely separate. And if you do have an agency that's doing your organic and you have another agency that's doing your paid, then those two agencies, or maybe you have one that's internal, but everybody needs to talk to each other and they need to line up. You need to make sure that your strategies are aligned and that you're not running in two different directions. We see that a lot as well. But when everything gets synchronized and you have these systems in place that really do a good job of measuring things, then that's when you can really take your paid social to the next level and really see the results that I think a lot of people hope to see when they start doing any sort of social strategy.
All right. Well, thank you both for being here today. And if we have made you rethink advertising, social, organic, paid, feed content, any of it at all, and your strategy, especially as we head into the second half of the year here, and you have more questions, please reach out to us. You can find us at chatterkick.com, hit contact us and reach out. We'd be happy to do an audit of your existing account or even talk through exactly how you might be able to implement this strategy for your own pages that you have and accounts moving forward. So thank you both, and we will see you next time on Generation Social Media.
Thanks, Liv.
Thanks.